The greatest mistake I see around money is not always bad investing. It is not always laziness. It is not always low income. Very often, it is much stranger than that. A person says he wants more money. But when money comes near him, something inside tightens. He delays sending the invoice. He undercharges. He feels guilty asking for more. He apologizes for wanting to be paid. He resents people who have more. He says he wants opportunity, then shrinks when opportunity requires visibility. He says he wants abundance, then treats every dollar as if it arrived carrying moral danger. That is not a math problem. That is a receiving problem. And until that changes, the number in the bank can grow while the person still lives like he is unwelcome in his own financial life. The source document you gave me is built around this deeper tension. It begins by asking people to notice what happens in their body when money comes in, when money goes out. When they open the wallet or bank app, and what childhood story made money feel stressful, dangerous, scarce, or shameful. It keeps returning to the same truth before someone can build abundance. He has to become aware of the emotional relationship that already exists between himself and money. Fay file site, Fay turn 32 file 0, Fay turn 32 file 3, Fay, I think that is exactly right. Because most people do not have a strategy problem first, they have a relationship problem first. A man can learn all the tactics in the world and still sabotage himself if the nervous system interprets money as conflict. A woman can become objectively successful and still feel poor if receiving still feels unsafe. A person can grow his income for 10 years and still never feel free if every new level simply gives old fear a larger number to manage. That is one of the most painful truths I know. Money magnifies whatever sits beneath it. If peace is beneath it, money can expand peace. If fear is beneath it, money often expands fear. That is why the richest looking person in the room is not always the freest person in the room. And it is why the poorest feeling person is not always the one with the smallest account balance. The source text says this in a very vivid way. It tells the story of having $1 million in the bank and still behaving as if there was no safety at all, still sleeping on couches, still choosing discomfort, still hoarding, still unable to feel rich because the body had not caught up with the balance sheet. That section matters because it destroys the fantasy that a larger number automatically heals inner scarcity. Fay file site, Fay turn 32 file 11. Fay, I have seen this in many forms. People who cannot receive a compliment often cannot receive money cleanly either. People who feel guilty having more than their family often sabotage growth just before the next level. People who were taught that rich people are selfish keep one hand on opportunity and the other hand on the emergency brake. People who grew up around money arguments often treat every bill like an accusation. People who felt less than around wealthier classmates spent adulthood trying to outrun the feeling rather than understand it. This is why I would never begin a serious money conversation with a stock tip. I would begin with a far more uncomfortable question. What did money feel like in your house? Not what did it buy? What did it feel like? Was it calm? Was it conflict? Was it secrecy? Was it shame? Was it constant lack? Was it comparison? Was it fear of being judged? Was it the thing adults worried about after you thought you were asleep? The source document makes this point beautifully through childhood stories of being slightly behind, feeling below the other kids, hearing parental tension, and absorbing a whole money personality long before any actual financial strategy existed. It argues that the money pattern begins in the early emotional field and then shows up later as avoidance, insecurity, overgiving, contraction, panic, or scarcity. Fay file site, Fay turn 32 file 0, Fay. That is why awareness is not soft work. It is foundational work. People dismiss it because it does not look like finance. But finance is not only numbers. Finance is numbers moving through a nervous system. If the nervous system is frightened, numbers behave differently. The same dollar means something different to a peaceful person than it means to a frightened one. The same opportunity feels different. The same bill feels different. The same negotiation feels different. That is why awareness is not decoration. It is diagnostic equipment. The reference text says this directly too. It compares money relationship to an attachment style: secure, anxious, avoidant, unstable. It says you can see your money attachment by watching the body, the breath, the mind, and the emotional reaction around giving, receiving, spending, and saving. Without that awareness, a person just keeps acting out the same pattern and calling it personality. Fay file a site, Fay turn 32 file 0 Fay. I believe most people have never actually met their own money pattern. They have only lived inside it. That is a huge difference. A person living inside a pattern says, I'm just bad with money, or I'm just not that type of person, or I'm just never going to be wealthy. A person who sees the pattern says something much more useful. I was taught to fear money. I was taught that money causes conflict. I was taught that having more makes other people uncomfortable. I was taught that rich people are bad. I was taught that asking to be paid is selfish. That second kind of sentence is painful. It is also liberating, because once a pattern is seen, it can be challenged. That is why one of the strongest lines in your source material is this: beliefs dictate behaviors. That line may be the spine of the whole document. The text keeps showing that what you believe about money determines how you charge, how you ask, how you spend, how you judge, and how much success you can emotionally tolerate. Faithfulness, Fay turn 32 file 0 Fay. I have seen that line prove true again and again. A person who believes money makes people bad will unconsciously avoid the kinds of moves that create wealth. A person who believes good people sacrifice may underprice himself for years while calling it humility. A person who believes I'm beneath everyone else may walk into rooms already prepared to receive less. A person who believes people with money are shady may unconsciously reject the very thing he says he wants. These beliefs are not philosophical hobbies. They are economic forces. They influence whether you negotiate, whether you invest, whether you charge fairly, whether you say yes, whether you shrink after an opportunity appears, whether you spend as relief the moment money arrives because some part of you never expected it to stay. That is why I would tell anyone serious about wealth to write the beliefs down exactly as they sound in private. Not the polished version, the ugly version. Rich people are selfish. Money will change me. I do not deserve more. I am safer if I stay small. If I become wealthy, people will judge me. If I ask to be paid, I will be rejected. If I receive too much, I will owe people something. Those sentences run more lives than spreadsheets ever will. The source text shows this in both directions. One speaker admits to believing that wealthy people must be doing something shady. Another describes feeling beneath everybody else. Both then connect those beliefs to later financial insecurity and scarcity. This is exactly why this story matters. The mind keeps building the world the body already thinks is true. Faithfulness site, Fay turn 32 file 0 Fay. Now once a person sees the beliefs, the next move is not to lie to himself. It is to begin creating new evidence. This is where the document becomes much smarter than people expect. It does not say merely think positive. It says shift from helplessness to helpfulness. That is a serious idea. When people are broke, overwhelmed, and emotionally trapped, they often collapse into one narrow question. How do I get saved? That question is understandable, but it is usually not the beginning of abundance. The beginning of abundance is often a different question. How can I be useful? The source text names this directly. It says the best way to create abundance when you feel broke and helpless is to go from helplessness to helpfulness. From I need someone to save me to how can I help myself by helping someone else? It argues that this shifts energy, restores momentum, and begins changing what opportunities appear. Fay file a site, Fay turn 32 file 0, Fay turn 32 file 3. Fay, I think that is profound, because helplessness turns a person inward in the worst possible way. He stares only at his lack. He watches only his own fear. he becomes consumed by the need to be rescued again. That is understandable. But it is not fertile. Helpfulness, on the other hand, reopens the field. It asks, what value can move through me? What can I solve? What can I recommend? Whose load can I lighten? What introduction can I make? What energy can I bring? That shift matters because value usually enters life through exchange, not through self-pity. The source document is full of stories that make this real. It tells of a restaurant hostess whose energy, generosity, and presence led to multiple job offers in a single night. It tells of someone building relationships by helping CEOs with LinkedIn profiles before charging for it. It tells of giving before asking, serving before extracting, and how that created not only money later, but access, reputation, and trust. Fay file a site, Fay turn 32 file, 0 Fay turn 32 file 9 Fay. I love those examples because they prove a very important point. Value does not always arrive first as cash. Sometimes it arrives as trust, sometimes as access, sometimes as a relationship, sometimes as a skill sharpened in public, sometimes as someone remembering how you made them feel. Then later, because the world is an exchange system, those things become economic. That is why I distrust the sentence, I have nothing to offer. Usually it means I have not yet learned how to translate what I already have into something valuable to another person. That is a very different problem, and it is solvable. The source text says generosity and gratitude are gateways to abundance. And I think many people misunderstand that phrase. They hear it as softness. It is not softness. It is orientation. A generous person notices more possibilities for exchange. A grateful person can receive more cleanly than a resentful one. A helpful person enters rooms differently than a desperate one. That matters economically. Fay file a site, Fay turn 32 file 0, Fay turn 32 file 3 Fay. Now let me say something that almost nobody wants to hear. A lot of people do not actually want abundance. They want relief. Those are not the same thing. Relief is immediate. Abundance is structural. Relief says, make me feel better today. Abundance says, make me capable of living differently for years. That is why the fantasy of quick, easy money is so seductive. It promises relief without transformation, and it almost always disappoints. Your source document attacks this fantasy directly. It warns about crypto-style get-rich-fast thinking, about the obsession with instant money, and then flips the whole phrase into something far wiser. Stop chasing quick, easy money and instead learn to make money easy. That is one of the best ideas in the entire file. Fay file site, Fay turn 32 file 8, Fay turn 32 file 11 Fay. That distinction is brilliant. Quick, easy money is fantasy. Make money easy is design. Quick, easy money wants to skip the years. Make money easy wants to use the years properly. Quick, easy money comes from greed. Make money easy comes from mastery. Those are completely different roads. And the source text is right to say that what looks easy later is often only the visible result of a decade or two of invisible preparation. A person may watch someone speak for an hour and collect a huge check and say that looks easy. But the file insists that this easy moment was built on years of skill, spiritual work, service, and value creation. That is exactly how mature wealth usually works. Fay file site, Fay turn 32 file 11 Fay. I trust that pattern deeply. You get paid easily later for what you built carefully earlier. That is why I agree so strongly with one of the best practical lines in the source. If you have $1,000 or $5,000 and do not know where to invest it in courage. More precisely, invest it in skills that produce courage. Public speaking, writing communication, selling, relationship building. The source text says this almost word for word. It argues that investing in courage, building skills creates confidence, and that confidence becomes a real internal currency that changes how you show up, what you ask for, how much you charge, and what opportunities you can tolerate without shrinking. Fay file cite Fay turn 32 file 11 Fay. That is one of the most Buffett-like lessons hidden in the whole conversation. The best early investment is often not some tiny speculative position in a hot asset. It is a serious investment in becoming more useful. Useful people do not stay broke forever unless they keep refusing to let usefulness become visible. That last part matters too, because many people become useful in private and invisible in public. Then they wonder why money does not find them. Visibility is part of receiving, and a frightened relationship with money often includes a frightened relationship with being seen. That is why courage matters so much. Now let us go to one of the most powerful exercises in the whole source file. Imagine money as a person walking into the room. How would you greet it? Would you avoid eye contact? Would you feel awkward? Would you gossip behind its back? Would you use it intensely when you were desperate, then ghost it afterward? Would you bow to it? Would you say thank you? Would you ask where it wants to go? That exercise sounds playful, but it is actually diagnostic. It reveals whether someone's relationship with money is ashamed, hostile, needy, manipulative, reverent, or calm. The source text uses this exact kind of prompt to make people stop performing and start telling the truth. Fay file cite, Fay turn 32 file 9, Fay turn 32 file 3, Fay Ike. Exercises like that because they expose what spreadsheets cannot. People say they want money, fine, but how would they actually treat it? Would they receive it well? Would they steward it well? Would they panic around it? Would they need it too much? Would they resent it? The answer to those questions explains a great deal about why some people keep repelling what they claim to want. The source document also extends this into gratitude rituals. Say thank you when money comes in. Say thank you when you pay a bill, because the bill reflects a service, a resource, a responsibility, a real exchange that supported life. Again, some people hear this and think it sounds soft. I think it sounds attentive. It changes the inner posture from war to stewardship. Fay file cite, Fay turn 32 file 3 Fay that matters. Because a person at war with money usually cannot build cleanly with money. War creates panic. War creates grasping. War creates irrational relief spending when money finally arrives. War creates avoidance when the account balance is painful to see. This is why I say the interrelationship must calm down. Not because calm people become magical, because calm people can see, and seeing changes everything. Your source text even includes what some would call magic language. The penny stories, the phrases about allowing abundance and synchronicity. I do not read those as superstition. I read them as a practical lesson in attention. When a person begins looking for value, for receiving, for possibility, he notices what he used to filter out. That shift in attention changes action. Fay file cite, Fay turn 32 file 8. Fay, now let me say the hard truth on the other side. Money will not heal a broken inner life by itself. The source document includes a haunting story of a man worth hundreds of millions who took his own life. The point is blunt and important. Enormous money does not automatically produce self-love, peace, connection, or meaning. It can expand a life. It cannot substitute for a life. Fay file cite, Fay turn 32 file 11 Fay. That is why I believe money work and inner work must meet. Otherwise, a person spends years chasing a number that cannot deliver what he really wants. And what does he really want? Usually not a number. If he is honest, he wants safety, choice, peace, enobness, dignity, love without panic, a rich life, not just a rich account. The source text becomes strongest when it insists on exactly this point. Abundance is not measured only by net worth. A person can have money and feel spiritually poor. Another can have very little and still possess generosity, kindness, service, and a sense of internal richness. That is not an argument against money. It is an argument against making money. Carry a job, it cannot perform alone. Fay file cite, Fay turn 32 file 3, Fay turn 32 file 4, Fay. I agree completely. Money should serve life. It should not become the substitute for life. That is why, if I had to reduce your source document to a single Buffett-like lesson, it would be this. Before you ask how to make more money, ask whether you are capable of receiving money without fear, holding money without guilt, using money without panic, and relating to money without shame. Because if the answer is no, then the first work is not in the market. It is in the relationship. And if that relationship gets healthier, everything after that begins to change. You notice opportunity sooner. You ask more cleanly. You charge more honestly. You spend more consciously. You say with less resentment. You give with less self-erasure. You build skill instead of chasing luck. You choose usefulness over helplessness. You choose structure over relief. You choose growth over fantasy. That is abundance as I understand it. Not pretending you are rich when you are not. Not bypassing pain. Not skipping the practical work. Abundance is the internal condition that makes it possible to use money well when it comes. So if someone were sitting in front of me right now, ashamed, tired, maybe afraid to open the banking app, convinced that everybody else seems to understand something he does not, I would not start with a ticker symbol or a side hustle list. I would say this: look honestly, write the story down. Write the beliefs down. Write the patterns down. Write what you do when money comes. Write what you do when money leaves. Then ask one question that matters more than most people realize. How can I become useful enough, calm enough, and courageous enough to receive well? That is where the whole thing begins to turn. Because once you stop fighting money, stop fearing visibility, stop confusing relief with abundance, and start building value from a steadier place, something changes. Money no longer feels like a wild force deciding your emotional weather. It becomes something you can actually meet, direct, and hold. And that, in the end, is where real freedom starts. Not when more money arrives first, when you become the kind of person who can finally receive it without going to war.